G'day everyone and welcome back to the second edition of the Monday Recovery. We'll be wrapping up the latest footy news in the round that's been. Boys, how you going?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Had a good weekend watching the footy. Nice and relaxing. Pies into too good, but,
No.
that's how it is when we're on to the next week, isn't that right?
Yeah, a couple of controversial points there too, fellas. So I'm sure we'll discuss those a bit later. But, really exciting week in footy, mate. And can't wait to get stuck in and talk about it.
Definitely, boys. And a few talking points here coming up. A few big ones and a few things that we're quite passionate about, speaking off air. We'll start off first with something that I'm very passionate about, the Saints. I just not talking about beating the top side on Saturday, but St Kilda went to Adelaide Oval on Monday night, having never won a game there. Hadn't beaten the Crows in 9 years. They won quite well. Then they went back to Noosa, came back to Adelaide on Saturday. Hadn't beaten the Power since 2011. Had only just won their first game at Adelaide Oval. Knocked off the top side by 29 points, I think it was, and they're sitting third. I mean, it feels like just yesterday we were talking about how the Saints have just flushed their season down the drain. But they've won two of the most, I guess, challenging games for them this season. And, boys, what are your opinions on the Saints after what we saw in the past 7 to 8 days?
Yeah, well, I'm impressed. Like, I thought I was a bit like 50-50 over the last few weeks about the Saints, obviously, because they've had some good wins and some bad ones. But their brand of footy is just exciting at the moment, and they proved it by beating the Power top of the ladder. Still are top of the ladder even after the loss. That shows how good they've been this season. So I was very impressed watching that game on the weekend. Adelaide the week before, like, we know it's Adelaide and all, but it wasn't an easy game. Adelaide actually rocked up and put on some good pressure that whole game against you. So that was a good win as well. But to kick away in that final quarter against Port Adelaide showed the real depth they have in that list to go through the whole game, and just how much they believe in that strategy to keep kicking goals.
And just on that too, but you talk about kicking away at the end. I think where the game was won and lost wasn't even in the last quarter. The third quarter, Port threw the kitchen sink at St Kilda in terms of pressure.
Yeah.
Going forward, Saints had one inside 50 for the third quarter, and they said, you know what, we're gonna cop this and we'll come back at you, and they did. And the fourth quarter was just it was so good to watch. And a man I want to talk about who he hasn't, like you said, Ethan, he hasn't had his breakout game, and he's had a few ordinary ones, but Jesus Christ, Max King, I'm seeing some similarities in the number 12 on that jumper, mate. He's pushing up to the wing, taking big flying grabs, and he's kicking a couple of goals every week. Shermo, what's your opinion on Max King?
Yeah, he's phenomenal talent, mate. He's I think both of those King boys at the moment have got very bright futures. I mean, you look at them, why are they so good? Well, you can pick it apart, many different reasons. They're fit, they're agile, they can sit on heads. But what I love about Max and Ben is they take it at the highest point. And, they take it at the highest point, and generally that highest point is about a foot taller than anyone else at the moment. Exactly. So, that to me is exciting. And I think all St Kilda fans should be super excited about the future, especially after a champion like Nick Riewoldt been in the number 12 jersey for a long period of time. I think we've just found our guy that's going to replace him, mate. I really do.
100%.
Yeah, they're really using their height to their best abilities. Like, when you're 200 centimetres as a key forward, like, to be able to mark it at its highest point is like, that's the best thing you could possibly do to help your team. What I've been impressed with Max is he's pretty much, it's his first season. Like, we know he was injured all last year. It's pretty much his first season of AFL. He's come out and he's getting almost the best key defender each game. His physicality and his body work like we saw against Daniel Talia, who's one of the best, like, body work key defenders in the game. He just brushed him aside and he engaged in contact, and he'd work off of him to take the mark. And, like, for a young, skinny key forward rookie, like, that's impressed me, like, so much.
I agree, and we don't often see blokes that tall with that type of agility and athleticism. I mean, you look at,
it's a rare breed.
The ruckman around the same height, and they're taking 2 weeks to put their arms up and take the mark. So for King to, take a few grabs, spin around and hit up a target at forward, or let alone kick a goal, well, geez, it's looking good for the Saints, and I'm looking forward to watching a bit more of them.
You know what, at the moment, Gilsey, it's I think being a Saints fan at the moment, two things are exciting me. All the new recruits are playing really well. They're playing great footy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you look at Zach Jones the other night. I think he had 8 or 9 clearances and 20-odd touches. You look at Gresham's move into the midfield now. He's 23 and a couple of goals. Hunter Clark, 24 touches, most for the team. To me, at the moment, the young guys are getting it done, so they're not relying on the superstars like Brad Hills and these sorts of players. And I think that's where your general depth comes into it. And at the moment, there's a lot of guys that aren't getting a game that have got that they've got plenty to come back to. So there's a massive tick. And then I think at the moment, going over to Adelaide, I think Paddy Ryder was sensational the other night.
Yeah,
and
both Ruckman, Rowan
the
Marshall,
dual
both.
Ruckman, 40
Yeah.
that's 4 goals, and I think it was 28 disposals or something. And I was just,
Oh, it was more than that. It was probably 35, I reckon.
I think people were questioning whether St Kilda played that double ruck role, and I think that answers the question right there. So it was good to see
100%.
that, boys.
Personally, what I've been impressed, like I'm not a Saints fan, but if I was watching that game, your backline needs some more respect put on them. Like the amount, like you said, that third quarter, they absorbed all that pressure. They don't have the big names. You brought in Dougal Howe, that's probably your biggest name. You've got Callum Wilkie and Ben Patton have come out of nowhere to just step into those roles. And Nick Caulfield putting his head over the ball, taking Charlie Dixon's knee to the back of his head. That's a big step for a young bloke.
Yeah.
And Hunter Clark, like we said, with the highest disposals. They're just young kids, young blokes that haven't really been in the spotlight, that are just, as a team, absorbing everything that's coming at them and getting it out. I'd be so happy with that if I was a Saints fan.
And lastly, now I think Rats has got to take a fair bit of credit for these two boys. But being a coach myself and analysing what different coaches do across the leagues, there's just something about Rats that just draws me in. I think it's the way he connects with his players. I mean, if you look the other night, the way he talks in the media, it's always, keep it down as much as you can, but really stay positive. And I really love that. I think that really wipes off on the playing group. And I think at the moment, if you see their victory the other night, Rats was the first guy to go and individually get around each guy and thank him for their role on the side. Now, there was one specific conversation, I can't remember who it was with, but you could tell that one of the guys, was a little bit disappointed with his game. And he was like, no, mate, head up. It's about the team. And you could tell he was trying to stay positive with him. I just love seeing that. I reckon that's great.
Without a doubt, mate. And it's good to see St Kilda finally play attacking footy rather than that chip around the back and wait for something to happen.
Exciting stuff.
It's a massive change for the Saints. And we won't get too excited about the Saints, boys. We can't give them too much of a rap. Settle down, 2 wins. We'll move on now to Carlton. I believe, Mac, I'll let you take us into this because you've got quite a few good points on it.
Yeah, well, Carlton, they're exciting, aren't they? I'm still not 100% convinced on them, but they've definitely got some exciting stuff coming up, and especially coming off a win over, it was, like we said, it's North Melbourne. We never know what we're going to get out of North Melbourne, especially after that deplorable effort against Richmond last week, but they rocked up and they're exciting, Carlton. I reckon they could be definitely a contender for finals coming in the year. I know the fans are having the time of their life at the moment. Going on, we made the finals first time in, what was it, 7 years or something like. It's insane to think of it, but I reckon they got a good mix down there. They're ripping off the 2016 GWS, what was it, Orange Tsunami. They're calling it the Blue Tsunami now, aren't they? I think so. That when you got that kind of ball movement, like same as St Kilda, they're not chipping it around anymore. They got that fast ball movement, and anytime you got a team that is confident enough to move the footy through the corridor that fast and with actual decent skills that we're seeing now this year, I reckon they're exciting and they're going to be able to knock anyone off on any day. You can't sleep on the Blues anymore.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think at the moment too, I think what they've got to be careful of is that they don't get opened up back the other way. I think, it's great. Look, most teams are playing corridor now because they know that that's the best way to attack through the centre of the ground. And that's generally the way footy's panned out over the last 12 months. So I think, I think Doherty has been sensational. I think he's a real leader that they've missed over that 12-month period. And he's really stepped back into that intercept marking role and that general and being able to set the players up. And I think at the moment, like what's really disappointed me is like you see, Cripps gets manhandled in that game a lot. Now, that's probably a talking point for itself. I mean, I think we've got to find better ways of looking after our premier mids in the comp.
Yeah, we're talking about this off air with the way tagging's looked at these days, where we've seen a lot of taggers get a bit more of a free rein around the contest and sort of stuff. Like we've all seen, most people, if you haven't seen the footage of Patrick Cripps on the weekend, I think it was Jed Anderson, was it, that was running with him in the forward line, son? Basically, right on his ass, grabbing him, and pretty much another bloke comes in there, almost fall on him and tackle him to the ground when the ball's 5 metres away at the contest, and nothing happens. So, like we don't like seeing that in the game. We hate seeing our superstars just tied down like that in what is an obvious, blatant free kick. So, like, I've been wanting to sit down and watch just Matt DeBoer for a while, telling you boys just what he does to get his opponents off the game so much, because he's one of the most successful taggers we've seen in a while. Like, does he do anything illegal? Because I think we need to see if it's these little scrags and then they stop and they get to contest. That's all right. Let them go. But if they're doing these blatant holding free kicks on superstars like Patrick,
That's not
Gibson,
tagging. That's just plain cheating.
That's just illegal footy. We just need to scrap that and get it out of the game. Personally, I think so.
Is it fair to say, Gilsey, that that we want, if a tagger, say the ball's behind a tagger and he decides to then look straight at the guy he's tagging and not watch the footy, is it fair to say that should be an automatic free kick because he's not concentrating on the ball?
If he makes contact, or even if it's the slightest shepherd push, whatever. Yeah.
Do we make that a rule now in the AFL where if they're taking their eyes off the ball and they're worried just solely on the opponent, do we now take that into calculation when, we want to protect our star midfielders?
I think you're onto something there, mate, because if it's either going to obviously stop us from not watching the good mids play good football, or it's going to stamp it out straight away, which will get rid of it. And Mackie, you talk about Matt DeBoer tagging and what he does to get people off the game. You look at the most successful taggers over time. I think there was Crowley at Freo. He was pretty good. Like, he just got in their heads mentally and did a few pushing around and pushing and shoving. So I think there's two arts to tagging. It's mentally and physically, obviously, but
definitely.
I think DeBoer's more just a smart tagger, and he takes people out of the game. And then you look at the North bloke. I think it was Ben Jacobs a few years ago.
Ben Jacobs was a pretty good tagger. Yeah.
Him and Steele are pretty similar. Jack Steele, that is, in terms of beating their opponent to the ball or being right on their ass, as you said off air, and tackling them straight away. So I think, like you said, if like Shermo, that rule, if with taggers like Anderson or people who are going to throw their weight around without the footy near it, definitely bring a rule to stamp that shit out, because we don't want to see it.
Yeah, we've seen like an evolution in tagging over the last few years, as you've spoken about, where Matt DeBoer is like those Crowleys where he does those little niggles and he'll push you and he'll keep you away from the contest by physically. And then as that's sort of phased out of the game, or they did tighten up on it for a bit and were paying more free kicks, but as we've seen that go away, but they've evolved to the Jack Steele type players where you get a really good ball-winning midfielder already and you just stand him side by side on a superstar and you say either be on his ass and tackle him or go out and just beat him to the contest straight up. And obviously Jack Steele's having a fantastic season and he's seeing results from that. But,
and we remember a guy called Cameron Ling, to me,
one of the greatest
when I was playing footy, he was the best tagger going around by a mile. And what made Cameron Ling so good was that he used the caravan tactic, which was every time he played on Blackie told me this, he hated playing on Ling because he just wouldn't leave him alone. Yeah. And the thing was, he used to stand behind him and push him under the contest and then beat him on the outside because he knew he was fit. Yeah. So there's that tactic as well. And I think, personally, I love that tactic being a coach, because then you're negating them at what their real strength is just winning the footy. Then you're getting it outside and then becoming almost like a cog in the offensive line and being used through the midfield and being able to be that link through the midfield for your team.
You need to go both ways.
100%. And that's not dirty tagging. That's clever football.
100%.
I don't think you could even call Jed Anderson tagging on the weekend. It was just plain cheating, just throwing clips around, starting every contest. That's not getting in the opponent's head. That's just seriously borderline cheating.
That crossed the line.
Cripps has a right to crack the shits, because why should he, a person who plays in the midfield every week wants to win the ball, why should he have to put up with a nagging defender 5 metres off the contest every time? I mean, it's just
100%. Yeah, that's why I think that rule needs to be looked at, Gilsey, in terms of if your focus is off the ball, I think automatically, if you're not watching the ball and you're worried about the opponent, I think automatic should be free kick.
100%, boys. And we'll move on from this now, because we don't want to get too worked up on our Mondays.
Yeah, a bit more of a positive note there, mate.
Yeah, 100%. Or not much of a positive note here for Macca, but we're going to talk about West Coast versus Collingwood yesterday. First half, the Pies look good.
First quarter, I'd say.
I should say. Then West Coast, just like we said off air, they're showing their Perth, I guess, Western Australian dominance. Playing at Optus Stadium, it's just
they're back.
They're back. It's
obviously they didn't have a fun time in the hub. Yeah,
not to bring it up, Macca, but that looked like the 2018 Eagles yesterday. That was awesome. They
were on. They say they obviously went to the hub. I don't know what was wrong with them. Obviously something was, because they didn't enjoy it. They weren't playing their best footy. But now that they're back in Perth with a home crowd, just being back with their family, it's playing normal footy pretty much for them. They're going to be pretty good again, as we've seen. Josh Kenny's back in form. The whole midfield was clicking together. Tim Kelly's finally had his best game as an Eagle. I know about you boys, but from my perspective, Brodie Grundy was made to look like a twos player by Nick Naitanui yesterday, pretty much. I reckon Grundy was absolutely destroyed in every facet of the ruck game by Nick Nat, and it was just a great performance from him individually.
Next, we're going to talk about
we'll move it on to. I reckon we were talking about Max King earlier from St Kilda. Like
Ben Brown. We won't touch on this too long, but
I just wanted to quickly touch on Ben Brown, the season he's having compared to someone like Max King, who's on the up and everyone's all spotlights on him, talking about how good he is and how Ben Brown has gone from being one of the Coleman contenders at the start of the year. People thought to now getting told he's going to get traded at the end of the year, and people want him out of the club. I just want to get your boys' opinion on what's going on there.
Typical North, really.
Yeah.
I mean, get around someone who's carrying the club one season, and the next they don't perform and shoot them straight, behind their back. So for me, to trade Ben Brown, I think it's a bit of a harsh, I guess, call, because I'm not going to make excuses for the bloke, but this year is just so we can't judge people too harshly. This guy's got a new kid. He's got, he's got his wife. He's playing in the hub. He's played in interstate, and like you just don't know what's going on inside their heads. He's obviously not having a great season, but we can't take that away. We can't take the last 4 or 5 seasons away from him. He's been a great player. So for North Melbourne to trade Ben Brown at the end of the year, I think, depending on what they get for him, I think it's a pretty stupid move, unless they get something that they're after. But North Melbourne are an absolute shambles at the moment, and that could have something to do with, I guess, the performance of a player, because when have North ever had prime entries inside 50? They don't have that midfielder that hits the forward every time. When Brown used to take those marks, he wasn't on the lead. He was, ball would get kicked high. He'd come out the square and just, try and take a big grab, which is what happened every time. I think Brown's been hard done by, and North aren't treating him the way he should be treated. And you talk about Max King at the Saints on the rise. I think when the Saints play good footy, Max plays good footy. It's inevitable for most clubs and most players, but it's a good comparison you got there, Macca, and it's exciting to see Max King have a bit of a rise, but it's a bit disappointing to see Brown on the steep downfall, like you said.
Yeah, I know. Sherman and I off air had a good chat about this, and Sherman, you had some good points like about his game this season. What's changed?
Yeah, I think at the moment I'm along the lines of I'm pretty similar to you, Gilsey. I think let's not be such a harsh critic on a guy that 3 consecutive years has kicked over 60 goals in our competition. Yeah. And as a key forward, that's phenomenal. That's a really key stat. And, so I'm with you, mate. I don't like to criticise people because it's so easy to kick a dog when it's down. Mm-hmm. But how I see it is that he has so much to offer. He's a great guy. I know he's a real love teammate around the North Rooms. Now, he has had a kid. He's got a lot going on. For we to know, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Yes, he's down on form. He knows that. We've seen the interview with Jay Rawlings after the game. You could tell he was really disappointed a couple of weeks ago. All it's going to take is for him to clunk a goal and kick, or clunk a mark, kick a goal, and that'll probably be the thing that ignites him again. But he is down at the moment, no question about it. But I think at the moment, it's not the Ben Brown of old. He's not, jumping at the footy, crashing packs. He's not. We're not seeing that. We're just seeing, it hits the ground and it's just going straight back out. Now that's a guy that's just lost a little bit of confidence. And I think, how do you fix that? Well, it's just getting back to the pure basics, competing. And once you start to compete for long enough, the results will start to come. I've got no doubt about that.
Definitely jumped the gun on the trade.
He's never had a shit season. Everyone has their rough patch. This is his rough patch.
Yeah, they're definitely jumping the gun on the trade stuff a bit quick, but we'll give him the next few weeks if he sorts his stuff out. He might even come out and kick 10 goals over the next 3 weeks.
Well, for his sake, I hope he doesn't. Now, boys, we'll move on to one of our last talking points, Crows. Like you said earlier in the show, Ethan, took it to the Saints on Monday night, which is a great game. And yesterday again, took it to the Bombers and probably deserved to win, in my opinion, and I think in your opinion as well. I think you've got a few good talking points on the Crows, Macca.
Oh yeah, I'm like as with a lot of teams at the moment. Like I'm excited with what they're doing. I wasn't the first half of the season. I thought Adelaide were just down and out going to be wooden spoon favourites, as they still probably are at the moment. But their footy in the first half was pretty shitful. Like it was pretty disgusting stuff. But they found a bit of confidence and a bit of motivation now that they've gone home to Adelaide and they've got a home crowd behind them. I reckon that's really helped them the last 2 weeks, having
100%.
that was it 25,000 fans at Adelaide Oval really cheering them on.
35,000 fans.
35,000,
Sunday.
like yeah, like that's huge. That's given them so much confidence for a young team. They've got so many young kids in their forward line, especially that. I like you. I just think they deserve to beat Essendon. I was there. I had all my multis on Essendon, but in the end, I threw them away. I was like, "Come on, the Crows, get up!" But yeah, like seeing Taylor Walker give that handball to Brodie Smith at the end, and just those little tiny mistakes they're making, those little missed handballs that end up in a fumble that bring the pressure. Just those little stuff which we'd expect. They'll fix it up at times, but though I'm confident they'll get some wins this year, Adelaide, and they've got a bright future ahead.
They'll nick a few. Yeah. They'll nick a few winnable games, but I think for them, I told you boys off air, I have a big opinion on Adelaide, and that's that I think that Taylor Walker and one of the Crouch brothers need to go. Not purely because they're not performing; they are performing, but they just don't. Adelaide don't fit anymore. They're starting to look like the 2012, 2013 St Kilda side, where they've got too many older players that are just, I guess, not useful anymore, and they're sort of wasting their time getting started on a rebuild. That's my opinion. I think Tex Walker, like you said, Shermo, you'd have him at the D's in a heartbeat. I think he's a great player. Obviously, he's been criticised for his leadership and that, but I think his passion for the game and passion for his club especially is enormous, and I'd love to see him go to a, like you said, premiership contender or a struggling side to help them out, and I'd like to see Adelaide get a few new talents in. I think they just need to make a few changes over there.
Yeah, well, Tex Walker's had 2 great games over the last 2 weeks. And like you said, I think just get him out to open space up for a young player like Darcy Fogarty and let them just grow. Because they've said it, they're in rebuild for the next 5 years. To get these young players to develop, well, he's still playing good footy, but it would probably be best used for him even elsewhere. So that's probably the best move, I think, for them at this stage.
For sure, mate.
Yeah, 100% agree, boys.
And now to the last point, something you're very passionate about, Shermo, is players in 2020 leading with their head.
Yes, there's a few instances on the weekend, mate, where I've been a passionate D supporter and seen, a guy like Neville Jetta just, trying to initiate contact with the head. I think you're only inviting serious injury. And I think we've got to find ways as players to, whether it's understanding the rules, I don't think it's that. I think it just more comes from common sense. I think you never lead with your head. You're always going to get hurt. I got taught as a kid that if it's a 50-50 ball and an opponent's coming at you and you're coming that way and you feel like you're not going to, or you're going to get there first, you bend down, you lower your centre of gravity and you turn your hips. That's a first basic skill that I ever got taught. So I never want to see players lead with the head, because they're going to get seriously injured and they're going to be leading their team for not being out in the park. So, yes, I think Neville's got a bit of an issue with that at the moment, because there's been so many times where we've seen his head bandaged up in games over the last couple of years. And then you go back to the Adelaide game on the weekend where there's a few times where, who was it? Gilsey?
Shane McAdam.
Yeah, Shane McAdam. So there's a few instances where we've seen it again over the weekend. I just think it's been a common thread, and I just think it needs to be stamped out.
But you know what, Shermo? That leading with the head, you talk about Jetta has been bandaged up numerous times over the last few years. All this takes from someone at the football club, a midfield coach, backs coach, tackling coach, whatever. Pull him aside for an hour at a session. It's all muscle. It's all upstairs. Yeah. Train him to fucking pick up the ball properly, and he'll start doing it and make it feel more natural. He's just used to picking it up head over the footy. He's taken that term head over the footy literally, and he's just banging himself up like McAdam did as well 3 or 4 times in 2 games. I think it's just stupid. And
like seeing that
all
footage
it takes is a couple of sessions of training to fucking stamp it out.
Yeah, seeing that footage of Jetta on the weekend, especially, who was a McStay that came through and clipped him with the shoulder or the elbow in the end.
I think so.
Do you think in some, obviously he's trained to go over with his head, we've seen over the years, are they almost getting the footy and leading with their head still to get that high contact free kick and not caring about
they
their
are,
health
and that's
at the
what's
stage?
hitting me, because But blokes like that are going to get free kicks for playing it. I credit to him for being that smart, but like, it's just stupid. It's not within the game. But then
It's
you got, like
it's
I
not
said,
a duck, but it's like that. It's just putting yourself in
no,
danger.
it's initiating a free kick.
It's asking for an injury, though, and you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you got people like Matt Parker and a few other people I saw yesterday getting wrapped around the back of the neck, which is literally high tackle, and they're not paying it. Just I don't understand. The game's in a bit of a.
We could talk about the umpiring for another 50 minutes the way we're going, so we better leave that for another day. Yeah.
Yeah, mate. And boys, to finish it off today, I want to ask you at the moment who your favourite player is, and just a little bit of a wrap on why they're your favourite player.
Well, Sherman, kick it off with this one. You got a good one, haven't you?
Yeah. It's a tough one. I think it's a year of the small forwards. I think we all realise that. And there's been it's been Charlie Cameron probably last year. It's probably Tommy Papley at the moment. He's probably been with Buddy Franklin out and the ability to kick multiple goals every week without many key targets. I know Reid was back on the weekend, but he's like seriously, he gets under players' skin. We're seeing it again on the weekend with Tommy Mitchell being the next player and getting under his skin. I love seeing a bit of character in the game. I think a bit of colour is always good. And
bit of a big head.
I think at the moment, I think he's probably leading the ability of ruffling feathers, but the ability to back it up with action as well. I think he's at the top of the list for mine. But I think at the moment, I think in another 3 weeks, if we see Josh Kennedy play at that level like he did on the weekend, I think he's still the most dominant key forward in the competition when he plays like that. And at his best, he's such a great player to watch. It's more than just the goals with Josh. It's his ability to apply pressure on the ground, tackle, give blocks for opponents, and then the ability. You watch his leading patterns in games. But, being a coach myself, he does such a power of work off the ball. Yep. So it was really good to see Josh get back to some serious form as well.
100%. Mako, who have you got, mate?
Yeah, well, I've gone with one here who I personally feel we saw he had a great performance on the weekend, and I say he's in the top 3 players in the comp when he's on the park a lot. I know a lot of people don't like him. He's off the park a lot, but I'm going with Toby Green. I reckon he's in the top three player in the competition when he's out there for a long time. Every time he's on the field, he makes the whole GWS team better. Just his intelligence. He's one of the smartest players in football with his positioning on the ground, where he gets to, his just disposal, where he kicks to and everything. And we saw with his 5 goals on the weekend, they weren't easy goals, all of them. He's one of the better set shot kicks with Josh Kennedy, like you spoke about, one of the best set shot kicks in the competition and doesn't miss. He takes every opportunity he gets. So for me, Toby cops a lot of flack for his obviously personality, but we love a bit of colour and a bit of personality on this show. So yeah, Toby, big fan of the show. He is Toby Green, roommate of Tommy Sheridan. So we'll get him on. Yep.
Good on you, Tommy.
So yeah, we'll chat to Toby obviously in the future and talk about how he is one of the better players in the game in my view.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And for me, to wrap it up with my favourite player, I've got a few stats here. That's why I'm looking down at my phone. A guy who I called in one of the, I think it was our episode that we did with just us 3 boys, Shermo's first episode. We all said a Brownlow medal favourite or a Smoky. I said this guy pretty early on, and I said Andrew Gaff.
Yeah,
he slept on for sure. He doesn't get any attention at all. Yesterday, 27 disposals at 76%, and I think he had 9 in the last quarter in the last 2 weeks. His skills are elite. I think he's really good at winning the ball on the outside. He's a bit of a fringe outside player, which is okay. Someone's got to do it.
He's an outside player, yeah.
But he uses it, and I think he's just so underrated, and I think he'll poll really well in the Brownlow this year. And one other one I'll quickly list off as well, who I think will poll really well in the Brownlow, I'll give a Saints one, is Jack Steele. I think he's had probably 6 or 7 consistent performances now, and looking at media attention and talking points around the next captain of the club as Geary's on the out, I think Jack Steele will captain the St Kilda Football Club in 2021, and I think that he is a fair chance for the Brownlow this year as well. So
yeah, well, I'm one of the biggest Jack Steele fans that isn't a St Kilda supporter going around. Like for the last 3 years, I've rated his work just 100%. With his tackling and his ability to win the ball off his own boot. He's gone under the radar for such a long time, and even his ability to shut down players, he's finally getting some attention, and I love to see it.
I think for me, lastly, I think my old mob Brisbane just proved on the weekend, you know, that you can have some good players out and you can still find a way to win. Good teams do that. I was proud of my D boys. They rocked up and they threw everything at them in the last quarter, and we nearly got there. But I think what was impressive, the way that they rode that storm. And I mean, if you have a look in that last quarter, and this is why, to me, he's the best player in the competition. Lachie Neale, his last quarter was unbelievable.
Superstar.
And his ability to get in the right place at the right time, read it off first hands. He was reading Gawn's tap for most of the night. He had 33, 34 touches again, boys. We keep saying it every week. And I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it until his Brownlow's medals around his neck because he really does deserve it. He's had an amazing year to date. He's been
We have this conversation about Lachie every week. That's how dominant he's been week in, week out. So yeah.
For sure, boys. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up there, everyone. We thank you all for joining us on this Monday. We're looking forward to the game tonight. I'm going to grab a quick tip off you, actually, boys. Who you got, Macca?
Oh, even though it's over there, I still like Geelong with all the young kids coming through. I reckon they'll just squeak over the line in a tight one.
Sherm?
Yeah, it's going to be tight, but the Cats have got some big ends, so if they play to the level, I think they should be okay.
Yeah, Cats by a couple goals for me. Thanks all for joining. If you want to let us know any guests you want to see on the show in the future, please let us know because we'll do our best to get them on. Leave as much feedback as you can. We love it and we act on it for sure. Yep. Hit up the socials definitely and just keep involved with our content because we're really trying to push this show to go, I guess, pretty viral. So we thank you all for your support and looking forward to chatting with you next week, boys.
Yep, catch you later. Thanks for listening, guys. Cheers.
See you guys.